let me ask you this though, right out of the gate. It has nothing to do with the Bills, but this Brandon Ayuk situation with him potentially getting traded to Pittsburgh, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to get a long-term deal done with the 49ers, but now that's a storyline with you being in Pittsburgh. What do you think happens with Brandon Ayuk?
Well, I would lean more towards what you're saying, right? It feels like these things kind of, when they get to this point, and you see they're still trying to work something out and there's some hurdles and they can't really come to an agreement, that he eventually stays where he is, which is in San Francisco here. But it feels like, the Steelers really want him, but they're only willing to go so high. I don't know how much they want to pay him. The Steelers have kind of revamped their wide receiver room, much like the Bills did actually here, where I don't think they really want to pay a premium contract for a player at that position, but that's what it would take. So at the end of the day, I think the chances are usually that the player winds up staying. Otherwise, maybe the deal would have been done already, maybe a couple months ago, even before camp.
Sal Capaccio here with us. This time last year, Stefon Diggs was an issue, right, with Josh Allen and Sean McDermott. We talked about that storyline until we're blue in the face. Now he's with the Houston Texans. You talked about that revamp offense. What kind of locker room does Buffalo have this year without the distraction of everything that was going on with Stefon Diggs?
Yeah, and the word distraction's usually a negative. I don't think it has to be here. I think that Stefon Diggs, his personality, his aura, his just being there was always something that people talked about, right? No matter what he did, it was always something with Stefon Diggs. But he was a great player, and by all accounts, he was a great teammate. And, the Bills are going to lose that, obviously. But I do think that there's a bit of relief around the organization that you don't have this player there that brings this really big personality that's always being talked about. And is he happy? Is he not happy? What's the situation with him and Josh, him and the organization, all those kinds of things. So I think from that standpoint, locker room wise, it wasn't like Stefon Diggs was a bad locker room guy. Not at all. I think players will tell you he was a really great teammate. But I do feel that there's a bit of relief, like I said, and maybe less walking on eggshells and thinking about that and having to be asked about that all the time.
And we know the Bills have been in the spotlight a lot. I think people aren't expecting as much out of them this year. They're still my pick to win the AFC East, and I kind of think, Sal, this year is set up for Josh Allen to go win his first MVP this year. How about that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Zach, because if Josh can put up the same kind of numbers he's basically put up the last few years with this cast compared to having Stefon Diggs and Gabe Davis and some of the others he's had, Cole Beasley, John Brown, and Emmanuel Sanders and players like that, I mean, this is, one of the lesser known kind of cast of characters around him. And if he can go and put up those kinds of numbers and the Bills do win a division and they go to the playoffs, I think that Josh Allen should get serious MVP consideration. He's already finished second and third, and he's been basically in that area over the last few years. I would also pick the Bills to win the division. Now, I don't think it's going to be easy by any stretch. It came down to one final game the last week of the year, last year even. The wild card here is what happens with Aaron Rodgers, right? And does he stay healthy? If he does, it's going to be a fight. They're a good team. They have a good offense, a lot of skill players, and they have a heck of a defense. But if he's not healthy, and I don't know if you can bet on him staying healthy, then I don't know if the Jets can really contend. I think the Dolphins are the team that could even take a step back, given all their changes on defense and losing Christian Wilkins and Phillips and Chubb coming off of injuries and the secondary being revamped. Their third defensive coordinator in 3 years with a different system. Can Tua stay healthy? The Bills still have Josh Allen, the best quarterback in the division. The Bills still have a very good head coach and coaching staff, a very good front office, and they still have some good core players on this team too. Vegas favors them to win the AFC East, and I think there's a reason for that.
Sal Capaccio here with us. So we saw James Cook take a big step last year. Dalton Kincaid, I have high expectations for him, and there's been a lot of buzz ever since he got drafted about Keon Coleman. What types of years do you expect from Kincaid and then also Keon Coleman?
I'll start with Keon Coleman because as a second round pick, people always say first round pick. I've made that mistake. You got to remember he was taken with the first pick of the second round, actually. The Bills had a chance to take Xavier Worthy. They didn't. They, famously, I guess now traded that pick to Kansas City. Xavier Legette was still there, but the Bills, they liked Keon Coleman. And I think this is a guy that's going to fit really well into this offense. He gives Josh Allen something he hasn't had. And that is an ability to kind of get a ball wherever he kind of puts it near his body with separation vertically, separation with his length. It's really funny, Zach, all the criticism of Keon coming out was lack of separation. I get it. He's not going to run by you, running a 4.35 straight down the field. But watching him in camp, man, he gets separation a lot of different ways. He gets separation with his body control and his length. He gives a really big red zone target to Josh Allen. Is he going to be a true number one receiver? No, I don't think so. Not right now. Maybe in a couple of years that winds up happening. But I think he's going to fit in right away. He's going to be leaned on a lot. He's going to be used in different ways. He's good with the ball in his hands. I think he's going to score touchdowns. So I think that's the kind of year he's going to have. But I think Dalton Kincaid, by the end of this season, could be in all-pro consideration. Now, there are a lot of great tight ends. So I'm not going to say Dalton Kincaid's going to be an all-pro because there's so many guys at that position. But that's the kind of player I think he'll be thought of by the end of the season. And if you ask me who's going to lead the Bills in targets this year, I think it's Dalton Kincaid.
Talking to Sal Capaccio right now. So we all know, right, Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Keon Coleman, James Cook, obviously the quarterback in Josh Allen. Who else on the offense do we really need to zero in on and maybe could surprise some people this year?
Khalil Shakir. Here's a great stat for you, Zach. This is incredible to think about. He is the only wide receiver on the entire Bills roster who caught a pass from Josh Allen last year in a regular season game. Every other player at wide receiver is brand new. Now, they do have Dalton Kincaid. They do have Dawson Knox, obviously.
Sure.
That's the guy, though, because this is a guy, if you go look at last year, end of the year, like since Joe Brady took over, basically the last 6-7 weeks, Stefon Diggs had a pretty big drop in production. We know that. You know who had a really big uptick in production? Khalil Shakir. The way he was used, his reliability. He is very reliable. He's got great hands. He's not the biggest. He's not the fastest. He's not the strongest, but he does a lot of things so well. Someone gave me the comparison the other day of him to Robert Woods, who had a really nice long career in the NFL, right? That's the kind of player I think he can be. Now, not just saying that nobody really said Robert Woods was ever a number one receiver. I don't think Khalil Shakir will be, but I think he does so much for the Bills and he'll be able to be so reliable for Josh Allen that I think Khalil Shakir is a guy that you should probably have an eye out for.
At the age of 35, what can people expect now out of Von Miller, especially after last year was basically a wash year for him?
We're all wondering the same thing. He, to me, is the X factor for the Buffalo Bills defense at least, and maybe even the entire team, because if you can even get some facsimile of what Von Miller was before his knee injury in Detroit and Thanksgiving in 2022, boy, that's really great, right? And Von Miller was really having a fantastic season at the age of 33 at the time. But last year, it just didn't go well. He came back. He said later he probably shouldn't have come back. He tried. It was kind of a lost season for Von. I'll tell you this. I think Von's had a really good camp. I think he's confident and he's comfortable in his knee again. I think that he's really wanting to prove to everybody. He doesn't want to go out of the NFL like this. He wants to, like it was last year. I think he wants to prove to everybody that he still has it. And look, the Bills aren't going to use him all the time. They're going to use him on first and second down. Greg Rousseau's a heck of a run defender. AJ Epinesa is there. They signed Juwan Smoot, who can play inside and outside. I think Von becomes, sometimes first and second down guy, with that third down pass rusher that he's fresh and he can come at you. So it's a great question. We don't know what we're going to get from Von Miller here in Buffalo, but if he can even if he gets a double-digit sacks, that would be a really big boost and win for this defense.
Sal Capaccio here with us for a few more moments. You're around this team more than anybody really in the media. You know what the narratives have been, right? Sean McDermott, good coach, not a great coach though. Buffalo, maybe the window has already closed on them. Where do you sense this team is mentally at after some of the close moments that they've had the last few years of maybe getting through Kansas City and finding their way in a Super Bowl?
Well, the core that they've had since 2017, and then remember when Sean McDermott got here, there was a 17-year playoff drought. It was the longest drought in professional sports, North American professional sports. They broke that drought together, 2017, and they were all bonded by that, and it really carried them for a while. Over the last few years, that core has been through a lot of, as you said, disappointments in the playoffs. And I think that kind of carries with you a little bit. Well, they've kind of reset, and some of that core has aged out. Some of that's financial out, right? I mean, now that a lot of those guys are gone, it's a new core. So I think mentally, you're just talking about a new team. You're talking about new players coming in, setting a new culture. This is the second iteration of the Buffalo Bills under Josh Allen. As far as Sean McDermott is concerned, look, there are many fans will tell you that. Will say like, yeah, he's a really good coach, but they've hit their ceiling with Sean McDermott and, they should move on from him. Whether that's true or not, look, I was living down in Florida when I didn't think that about Tony Dungy, but then the Buccaneers did, and John Gruden won a Super Bowl, right? I mean, like, that can happen. But I will tell you this, Zach. Terry Pagula and Kim Pagula, they have, to me, no appetite to do that whatsoever. They have ownership dream, which is an owner, a GM and Brandon Beane, and a head coach that are aligned and that are successful and have strong continuity. The Bills are still the second winningest organization in the NFL over the last 5 years. And that's because of a lot of that kind of stuff. So I don't buy any kind of, the fans might want it to happen or something, unless Sean McDermott and the Bills had some sort of really drastically down season, or there's infighting going on inside one Bills drive, which hasn't happened in 7 years here. Sean McDermott isn't going anywhere, at least until we get into 2025 and we see where things go.
So no Bill Belichick coming to Buffalo is what you're telling me, Sal.
That's not happening. No, that's not happening. The Bills and this ownership group, I don't think would have any type of, again, I'll use the word appetite, to have that kind of personality and person who would want that kind of control.
He is Sal Capaccio. What's the big storyline here for you going into these joint practices?
Really, the Bills did not play well last week. And again, it's a lot of new faces, and Sean McDermott wasn't happy about it. Now the scoreboard, you want to win. That's not it. It wasn't about the scoreboard, Zach. It was about, there's a standard that you have every time you step on the field, and there's some new players here. There's some younger players, and that standard has to kind of be relearned by some of these guys. And I think that the storyline for me is this week, they need this. They need these joint practices against the Steelers, and then to get into Saturday and to kind of reestablish themselves and say, look, yeah, we are still the Buffalo Bills. And when we go out there, regardless of all the success we've had over the last several years, what we saw last Saturday on the field, can't be our standard, and we have to play better.
Sal, appreciate it. Thanks so much for doing this today.
You got it, buddy.